Okay, great. So we have been talking about the usual revision variances, material, labor, variable overheads, fixed overheads. So now we come into kind of the area where we're growing in at level 5. And it's really this issue of mix and yield variances. So the argument really is that you have a scenario where you're making you can make a product, but it's almost like process costing. So you're pouring in a number of chemicals, for example, or other products into a process to make, if you like, a particular product. So the issue is quite interesting here is that typically we might think of this as a VAT, and we want to understand. I mean, in terms of pricing, that's pretty straightforward. So pricing, nothing will change. There is an assumed price, and there's a standard price, there's an actual price, and we find the difference times the actual number of units that go in, and then we can find the price variance. So that's pretty much, nothing will change with the price variance, which is why you don't see much of a discussion on it. How much did you think you'd buy each kilogram of input? How much did you actually buy it? Times all the kilograms you bought, and that's the price variance done. The interesting thing here is this question of the volume variance. So you would have a volume variance, an efficiency variance if you like, but because you're mixing different items, there is an argument that more or less has come out due to the mix, and really that's what we're trying to investigate here. So we're trying to investigate this issue of the volume variance. You can see here tools of material variance being made up of material price variance, which is what I've said, very much unchanged. And this can be compared, and the other thing we are looking at is this question of the usage, the material usage variance. The material usage variance very much is broken up into the mix variance and the yield variance. And that's what we sort of have, what we're looking at here. This measures the impact on the profit as we change the mix of materials, or if you like. So very much, the mix is very much about input, very much addressing the inputs that have gone into the process, if you like, and to see how the products came out in the end, what the output was in the end. So it's very much about inputs with mix, and with the yield, very much about the outputs, if you like. So the argument really here is that we want to just sort of, ultimately we want to know what the output is, ultimately. But the argument here is that you might change things up a little here, and you'll have a different output. Might be better, might be worse. And typically, the example I like to give is this idea of making a cocktail. You're making a cocktail, for example. What you have is you might need, for example, there's an agreement there should be 50% alcohol and 50% orange juice, for example. Imagine you change the mix because you think, listen, well, I still want to fill the glass up. So, because that's what people are expecting, right? So, in them filling the glass up, someone might give 20% of the expensive one and 80% because they're trying to save money here. They know this is more expensive. Sorry, this is the alcohol is more expensive, so you use less alcohol. You use more orange juice to top it up, but overall, you know that orange juice is cheaper than alcohol, and you're hoping to get the same type of output. Well, probably not. You probably have to make more glasses to get the person to drink, to arrive a state of being drunk, so to speak, as opposed to they'd be drunk quicker if you had just stuck to the original mix. So that's what this is really trying to investigate, this question of mix and yield. So let's look at the mix first using this example. This has come from your text. It's exactly the same thing, actually. The two questions, 8 and 9, one just looks at mix and one looks at yield. So like I said, because it's about the mix, it's very much about the ratio of the mix. The ratio of the mix, the ratio of that mix. What is the mix ratio? And this is really asking you to do for every 1,200, right? That's 600 plus 240. Half of it must be for A. So 50% must be for A. 240 over 1,200 is 20% must be for B, and 30%. So whatever the concentration must be in this mix. That's what they're saying. So in terms of a mixed variance, what we're saying here is that, well, it says here that during April, so remember I'm talking about inputs. So during April you used 14 plus 5 plus 5, which gives us 25,000. So you used 25,000 kilograms of input, 25,000 kilograms of input, and what we should have had was a mix of 50%, so 12,500 of A. We should have had 20% of B, which is 5,000, and this balance is 7,500. So we should have had, this is the mix we recommended in order to make this product. So let's see, because you see the argument here is that possibly the mix variance will affect what comes out in the end. So let's look to see if you've saved any money, because typically you spend £1.10 on A and £2.40 on B and £1.50 on C. So what have you done? You have used less. Sorry, this is what we recommend, and this is what you did. You did for 1,400. So you used 1,500 more kilograms. So this is the variance. Then you should have. So this is adverse. I'll just keep the adverse in red. You used 500 more than you should have of B, and you used 2,000 less. Oops, sorry. Let me just get that pen color again. You used 2,000 less than you should have of C. So you have a favorable variance in terms of usage of using C. So when I now multiply this, of course, by their amounts, that's £1.10 times £2.40 times £1.50. Let's see what this comes out at. This is 3,000. This is 1,500 times £1.10 is 1,650. And this is adverse, by the way. 500 times £2.40. This is 1,200, adverse as well. And this 3,000 is favorable because you used less of it. So if I add all these three together, 1,650 adverse plus 1,200 adverse plus 3,000 favorable, I get 3,000 minus 1,200 minus 1,650, which is 150. So I get 150 favorable. So you saved £150 by using, well, it seems that you've used much less of this. You also used less of, sorry, here we are. I was that's how I look at it from back to front. You used more of A, maybe because it's cheaper. You almost used 2,005. Well, you used 1,500 of that. Then you used a bit more of B, actually 500. So 500 you used more, but you used a lot less of C than you should have. Saving, which is where that saving really comes from. That's a 3,000 favorable, right? So you have 150 favorable. So this is the mixed variable. The aim is use the actual amount, the actual quantity, the 225,000, because we're just interested in the mix of what you've done. We will come to yield, but our argument for now is let's just focus on the mix. We'll come to yield, and as I mentioned, mix is about inputs. Yield is about outputs. So we've just looked at inputs. What was the mix of the inputs compared to what they should have been given that glass, that 25,000 liter glass. Cool, great stuff. So yes, of course, keep practicing, have a go at other questions, but that's the kind of fundamental thinking that we work with over there.